Welcome to Designing Healthcare That Cares, the show where we explore how to build healthcare systems where people and performance thrive. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Suttin, a physician, coach, and healthcare leader who believes that human flourishing and organizational excellence go hand in hand. Each week, I talk with leaders, change makers, and innovators about how to shift culture, lead with purpose, and tackle the root causes of burnout. Because when healthcare works for the people in it, everyone wins. Welcome to the Designing Healthcare That Cares podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Suttin. I've got a wonderful guest on today, Dr. Christine Kempton. So let me read her bio. She is a professor of hematology at Emory University and director of the Hemophilia of Georgia Center. She runs Christine Kempton Coaching, where she works as a transformational coach. She trained in medicine at Mayo Medical School, completed residency at Oregon Health and Science University, and her hematology fellowship at UNC Chapel Hill, and later added her coaching certification through the Martha Beck Wayfinder program. Originally from Northern California, Christine has called Atlanta home for the past 20 years, where she lives with her husband, 2 teenage sons, and extended family close by. Outside of work, she loves reading, pickleball, dancing, skiing, and sharing good food. Christine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Laura. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about, of course, you got extensive training, hematology, and then, as you mentioned when you were sending me your information, you lead this double life, and you seem to navigate it very well. So tell us what led you into that field, into coaching. Tell us how you got started in that journey.
So long ago to medicine, it actually started, I was a dancer. So I was pretty intense in ballet. And I remember my teacher, we just had one teacher at the San Francisco Ballet School that kind of coordinated all of high school. And it was like, at some point, you're not going to dance. What are you going to do? And at that point, I thought I'll be a doctor for dancers. Then when I turned 18, was struggling with my weight. Some other things weren't working out the way I wanted them to be. And I just was like, you know what? It's time for me to go to college. So I left ballet and went to college and said, okay, well, I guess I'm going to do medicine now. So I continued and enjoyed it, but my path clearly deviated from being a doctor for dancers and liked hematology, but really was not interested in being an oncologist. That wasn't for me and didn't think that I could do that for a long time. So I went to residency thinking I was going to do general internal medicine, program director, that sort of thing. But along the way, developed interest in coagulation. I love data. I love putting puzzles together and pieces together. And so that drove me towards hemostasis and coagulation, and UNC has a strength in that. And so that's where I went to do my fellowship, met my husband, and went deeper into the journey through my care of patients with bleeding disorders, where I really enjoy both the potential to be a consultant, like tertiary level consultant, where you're explaining things that most people don't understand. Coagulation cascade is never anybody's favorite in medical school. Yet also I care for patients longitudinally. I've cared for some of the same patients the whole 20 years I've been there. At times I've had 3 generations of patients in my practice. I've liked that balance between both that kind of high level tertiary consultancy and that longitudinal care. So that's what's taken me and drove me to the hematology part of things. Though in my career, as I progressed and took on more and more responsibility, more leadership, trying to do more and more, never feeling like anything was enough, that drove me towards my own experience with burnout. Then through my recovery, and also after doing something for 20 years, wanting to have something kind of new and novel and different. And so that's where the coaching comes in, just wanting to share what I've learned with more women and have a new experience for myself.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing all that. I know when you and I connected before, I do remember that you were a dancer. And so I don't have any experience with it, but talking to people that were dancers, it sounds like there is a really close tie with that perfectionism within the dancing community and growing up as a dancer. You're nodding, so I'm guessing that's something that you experienced.
Yeah, for sure. It used to be very particular focused. It's just the tiniest thing has to be in the right place at the right time. You're trying to manipulate the tiniest little of muscles to try to get the right look and position and placement, and really constantly looking for feedback. And the teacher, like, you wanted people to always be telling you what was wrong so that you could always get better. That was the environment. Like, put me in the front so I can get more of that critical feedback. There's clearly a sense that if you were not getting that feedback and that direction, like do this, do that, that you were not someone that was worthy of the attention.
Mm,
So it's this externally focused
yeah.
position that you kind of grow up with rather than developing an internal locus of value and control. It's really putting it all out there. What's the teacher think of me? How are they responding to me? What kind of am I getting? Where am I positioned in the classroom? What does all that mean?
That's really helpful, at least to paint the picture for me. And again, I'm putting my own experience on that and what I'm hearing about just the medical training environment. And I know there is some of that, like stand in the front on rounds and show the professors that you're engaged in, that type of thing. It sounds like that ethos was a lot stronger than in
Mm,
medical training, but we still see a lot of those perfectionist tendencies carry over into medical
uh,
school
for
residency.
sure. Yeah, for sure. I think they do. I'm not even sure that ballet was necessarily any stronger. It just, it does start young and having it ingrained. But I do think the same thing. I think medicine does attract people who are, I can do better. I can do better. And you need to be somebody that is interested in
Hmm.
meeting challenges and doing hard things and wanting feedback and doing all that. And how to do that in a way that really still honors your own value and isn't from a place of fear, but is from
Hmm.
a place of more expansive love and moving, I think
Yes,
is the challenge for people. And
right.
oftentimes when we think like, oh, I'm not going to be a perfectionist, it means that I'm not going to care. I'm not going to do big things. I'm not going to try hard. I'm not going to go for the thing that I want to get. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, that external feedback is so powerful. A couple years ago, I was coaching a physician who was new out of residency, and this was a few years ago, so I don't remember the exact time frame, but basically she was an intern when COVID hit. So the trauma that she has around that was she was still dealing with that. And then she was also noticing this void in her first few months of practice where she was missing out on what she found out and through our coaching together was that she was missing out on feedback from her colleagues, that she was so used to getting feedback in
Mm-hmm.
the form of grades or recommendation letters or attaboys, or even, hey, you could do this better, or you could do this differently, or here's a better way, that she felt lost. She said, I don't know how I'm doing. She was doing internal medicine practice, and her patients might not get better for years.
Right.
Or they might never get better. And so she was really seeking that sort of external feedback and had to find that for herself, find that in herself. And so I think that is really powerful within medicine. And like you said, medicine tends to attract people who are lifelong learners, which is a good thing. And we want to stretch ourselves and work hard because we have
Mm-hmm.
to. But at the same time, it can be kind of a gift and a curse that
Mm-hmm.
if we're striving, is it because we're trying to push down that fear? Or is it because we're actively learning and wanting to grow? A place from
Yeah.
expansiveness, like you said. I just love how you put that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And it's for me, and one of my big realizations in working through burnout is the role of fear in my life. And really now I see it in a lot of other people's lives
Hmm.
in driving so many behaviors that we're really unaware of
Hmm.
and leading us astray or trying to avoid something rather than move towards something.
Yeah.
And that learning to recognize fear that's coming up in order to then address it and soothe it and understand why you're afraid of it and then make the right choice that is for you and what you want, then that's really been powerful for me.
Hmm. So you mentioned your own experiences with burnout. What was it that helped you with the recovery process? What was either the internal resilience that you had? I know that's a charged word, but your internal
Mhm.
resources and then external resources.
Well, at first, it took me a while to recognize that I was burned out. I think now, in retrospect, it was probably a few years or more that it was brewing. And for me, finally, I did join a group coaching program for women with burnout, not specific to physicians, but just generally high achieving women, which was transformational for me. The program is called We Are the Women. The changes, I think there's sort of some practical stuff that early on were big wins for me. I will also say the mindset shift. I remember the person telling me that burnout, it's like, it's not your fault, but it is, you're doing things that are contributing to this.
Yeah.
You have a role here, which to me, and she framed it this way, but it felt to me like this big aha, like, holy cow, I can actually do something about this. Because before it felt very much like the weight of healthcare, and medicine was on me. And it was like, the system needs to change, but it is such a titanic turning,
Hmm.
and that it felt to me like there's going to be no relief if I'm going to be dependent on the healthcare system changing. That just like felt overwhelming. So it felt like the only way I could get away from it was potentially to leave. But by that recognition of like, well, wait, I didn't think of myself as a perfectionist when I was going into that. I thought, well, there's plenty of times I've turned stuff in that was good enough, that was okay. There have been errors on things that I have, like, oh, that's okay. So I sort of had examples of where since I have done this that is not consistent with perfectionism, I'm therefore not a perfectionist,
Hmm.
that I don't have any perfectionist tendencies, which is
Hmm.
not true. Now I know. The same with people pleasing and kind of over functioning. So, anyways, the recognition that there were behaviors that I had developed really as coping mechanisms, and I could develop new coping mechanisms was very lightning to me and a shift. And then the process was about learning those new processes. There's two other kind of practical things that were early on major game changes for me. One is just not looking at my phone in the morning and choosing not to do it at night. I'm not looking at my emails and setting that boundary. That was the
Yeah.
biggest, best, both the outside and then just not even my phone. Like I don't even look at the news in the morning. I don't scroll social media. I don't until I'm sort of up and checked in and good. So I do pay attention to myself first. So then the rest of my morning practice of having stretching, meditation, journaling, those are all important for me. I do hear sometimes people sort of giving a quip that like, meditation isn't going to cure burnout. And it by itself is probably not. But I do think a mindfulness is important in living a healthy life and moving past burnout, a mindfulness to understand what it is that is coming up for you, that is having some capacity to evaluate those emotions and understand what they are. That those are essential practices, and meditation is one way to develop that compassionate observer that you need at times recognize like, oh, I'm getting excited about something here. What is it? This
Yeah.
means I'm about to be triggered or I am in the process of being triggered. What is going on? Why is this
Yeah.
happening? And being able to step back and pause. And one may be able to develop that outside of meditation, but I think meditation is a really strong, tried and true way to develop that awareness and to stop living your life in automaticity.
Hmm. I want to unpack everything that you just said. So first of all, I'll start with the second thing that you said, this not looking at your phone in the mornings and then the evenings. I mean, we could talk for hours about digital hygiene and how impactful that
Mhm.
is to brain health. And it sounds like that's been really powerful for you and
Yeah.
powerful practice. Meditation, and this kind of gets into your first point about, yeah, meditation isn't sufficient to cure burnout. And at the same time, it can be a really helpful tool to notice and be more aware of bodily sensations that are coming up, emotions that we have, and then also help us to get that space in between the stimulus and the response. How do we
Mhm.
notice those emotions and yet not react to them, but are intentional about moving forward? I think the first thing that you said about how much agency you had over your own burnout and your own recovery, I think is really interesting. And you've sent me this article, which I read earlier today, and we'll put a link in the show notes. Your editorial on this concept of how much individual agency and control a person does have
Hmm.
in their own burnout, and that when we say it's all just about the system, then we're really disempowering the individual. Sounds like a lot of that came from your own experience, and I'm
Hmm.
assuming comes from your experience in your coaching work as well. So
Hmm.
I want to spend
Hmm.
some time on that. I feel
Yeah,
like
right.
that's probably a little bit, maybe not polarizing, but there's so much conversation
Yeah. I think it
online
is
about,
polarizing. It
yeah,
is.
about
Yes.
like, oh, well, it's just a system that needs to change. And I think it's very nuanced. So I feel like, I mean, again, a lot of what we see, at least a lot of what I see on social media is very black and white. And until the system changes, nothing's ever going to change. And let's
Mhm.
dive into that.
Yeah, yeah. My thesis is that yes, the system needs to change. And without individuals having some sense that they can do something to change, which means that there are things that they can take responsibility for.
Hmm.
And it's not your fault, but you can take responsibility and you could move forward. And I think denying that actually is harming individuals, creating more shame and perpetuating suffering. So when we can then say, there are things that you're doing that are contributing to burnout, and we can spend time on cleaning up your side of the street.
Hmm.
Some people come out of that cleanup and are like, yeah, it was all just me, and I'm in an environment that works. Other times, like, no, I'm better, but this still environment is just too difficult to work in. And then you can kind of try to navigate different environments. And in medicine, a lot of times it's the environment. There's still parts of the environment that are difficult, and you can potentially navigate some changes. There are some things that individually can't be navigated. It's still just the big picture. We have no control over insurance companies and what they're asking us to do
Hmm.
or how they're denying things for our patients. Those things are huge. I also would argue that the more each of us in healthcare as individuals are moving in a space of love rather than a space of fear, we'll be able to influence the system and set up our boundaries in the right way that will push back on the system. We'll be able to communicate our needs better, coming from a space of aligned knowledge about our needs rather than a place of scarcity and smallness.
I think that's so beautiful the way you phrased it. And your argument wasn't, no, the system doesn't need to change and it's all individual responsibility. But what I'm hearing is that, and the way you phrased it around that, yes, it's not your fault. And at the same time, there are things that you can do. And I mean, the royal you, any of us, there are things that we can do in order to better understand ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
better improve our lives and our station and just even our thoughts and our emotions. And again, back to how do we respond? Do we snap at the medical assistant who asks us to do something, or do we respond
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's kind and
Yeah.
caring? And so all of those types of things, it reminds me of I don't know if this is the Buddha or where this phrase comes from, but it's if everyone would just sweep their front porch, then the whole world would be clean. And I think
Mm-hmm.
about what you're saying as, well, this is how we tackle any big issue that's facing us in the world today. Political strife and climate change and wars and all of these things that we're dealing with. We have to come from a place of love for ourselves and alignment with our own values and recognizing our own needs. And that takes work. That takes deep work. And until we have that clarity, like you said, we clean up our side of the street, then we have a better picture. We have to
Mm-hmm.
put the glasses on to actually see what's in front of us. Until then, we're just reacting out of fear.
I think one thing that holds people back is this sense of it's another to do,
Yeah.
that cleaning up my side of the street is a to do thing. And yes, it does take time and work. What I've been for myself and what I've seen for others is that the payoff is in the time back. When we're not spinning in perfectionism and people pleasing and over functioning and trying to get the whole world to say we're good enough and continuing to work to try to feed the hungry ghost of enoughness, it pays back
Hmm.
to us. And that's when then we get more space and my work and others' work becomes more efficient because you're aligned. You're like, I know what I need to do. This is clear. I'm not doing this for that person. I'm not for that
Hmm.
person. This is it. There is a little bit of you got to trust and put in work before you get it back. But pretty quickly, you're like, wow, I feel more free and have more time for myself because I'm no longer out in my focus of the world. I'm caring for
Hmm.
myself. So then it becomes perpetuating and self-fulfilling when you can do that.
Yeah. One of the things that I love to see in my work with physician clients is just the ripple effect that coaching can have. And of course, I see it within my coaching, but in any sort of personal development journey, then a lot of times relationships get stronger with spouses or partners or children or aging parents or patients and colleagues. I mean, it's just you unlock some of those locks and it just opens up a whole new world. And it's not limited to work and medical practice or running a
Right.
business or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, for
It has
sure.
such a huge impact. And
Yes.
the other phrase that comes up for me as I hear you is it can be seen as another thing to do, another thing to check off. A conversation that I'll have with my clients sometimes is, well, this is going to be hard for you, but it's hard for you now, isn't it? I mean, that's why we're
Mm.
working together. That's why you're paying me money. I mean,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
choose your heart. Again, I don't know who
Yeah.
originated that. It sounds like you've had this experience. I know I have in my clients. Once you start to make those shifts and you start to see the rewards that come from it and the ease and the peace, then it's just, you wouldn't want to go back. You can't
Mhm.
unsee that.
Mhm. Yes, definitely. The hour I spend in the morning pays dividends throughout the day.
Yeah.
How could I possibly find an hour in the morning to do
Yeah.
that? And there are some mornings where my meditation is very short, my journaling is very short,
Yeah.
because there is something that is pressing, but it does pay the dividends going forward. And my relationship definitely in burnout, I would have described my relationship often with my husband as transactional, that's how we were going about our days. And my relationships with my children also felt distant and disconnected. So it is coming back to myself that has really improved my relationships with people around me.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. What does life look like
Yeah.
for you these days? What's your balance of clinical and coaching work?
Yes. So up until today, really, I had been 80% effort. I am now 70% effort as of today, which means I have a day and a half now. I had been having Fridays for the past year for my coaching time. And my work at Emory, I have a day of clinic a week in our bleeding disorders clinic, and otherwise it's administrative and research focused.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's awesome. I mean, it's, we're
Yeah.
recording this early September 2025. So, if, at least from what I'm seeing from you, it sounds like that's a positive shift.
Yes, it is. I wanted to have a little more time to put into coaching to build my business so that I can
Mhm.
have a bigger impact for women and women in medicine to be able to have the impact that they want to have in the world. You know, we go into medicine because we want to do things for
Mhm.
people. And a lot of times, I think, in my experience too, sometimes as I just kind of felt beat up, I'm like, "Ah, I don't want to go. I don't want to go for that higher level leadership because it's hard here and it's hard for me to imagine that I could take on more."
Mhm.
And that was from my place of trying to grip and grasp and really control what
Mhm.
was happening. And through efforting, making things happen, and I think there's a different way to do it. So helping women have more impact by being able to live and lead without such effort in more
Yeah.
flow by using the feminine in addition to the masculine and being able to know how to do the dance between the two. That's what's lighting me up right now. So I'm excited to have more time and opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And you're setting the example and living by it, which is great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. We'll put links in the show notes to your website and your LinkedIn. Anything else that you want to share with our listeners today?
I would love everybody to know that they're valued for who they are, not for what they do. That you're intrinsically a beautiful human being, and there's nothing you need to do to prove that. That is another wish I have for the world, for everybody to know that. So thank you for having me.
Yes.
This has been a lovely conversation.
Thank you so much. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks for listening to Designing Healthcare That Cares. If today's conversation gave you a new idea or inspired you to see things differently, share this episode with a colleague and keep the conversation going. You can find more resources and tools and information about me at my website, drlaurasutton.com. For a step-by-step guide to reclaiming your time, energy, and joy as a physician, grab a copy of my book, The Purposeful MD: Creating the Life You Love Without Guilt. It's available in print, ebook, and audio on all major platforms. I invite you to follow me on social media, where I post regularly with both actionable strategies and candid insights on how we can design a healthcare system that truly cares. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice, and it should not replace care from a qualified healthcare provider. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare professional for any medical questions or decisions.